All right, we're back, and we're with Roger and Holly. We're going to talk about Joe Biden.
Go ahead.
We're talking about Joe Biden's gaffes here. Roger, we've got 3, maybe 4, it depends on how you count it, major gaffes. We talked about the Biden didn't know whether he was vice president during Parkland or not. Margaret Thatcher was particularly weird. He also said he believes in truth over facts. Look, it's been a story of his candidacy since he's been in politics. The real question is, but does it matter? But what does it reveal about the candidate? His campaign is saying that, if you put a camera in anybody's face for that long, they're going to slip up. But I mean, there's a lot of other candidates in the race, and I don't see that happening.
Fair.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not like we live in a country that would actually elect someone who says bizarre things.
Right. No, we would never do that.
Insults CEOs or athletes.
I don't think it's disqualifying. It's more about what is it about him in particular? What is it about
heads of state, for example?
His candidacy? Why is it so? Why does this seem to strike such a chord with people? What is it about this in particular? Because with Trump, it's always like, he's speaking to a larger truth. That's why people forgive it. That's why his voters forgive it. What is it about Biden's candidacy that people don't seem to forgive that, or do they? Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, people is a very broad term, right? I mean, I think as we've seen from the numbers, he takes a little bit of a dent, especially when there's a week where there's 3 or 4 of these things. But, and it'll be very rare that I make comparisons between the current occupant of the White House and the former vice president. But in a way, that kind of behavior fits into a framework where they just say, Trump says outrageous things, and oh my God, he said it's something outrageous, and Joe says odd things every once in a while, and so it's not a huge surprise. So it fits into something that people have decades of somewhat of a relationship with. If it continues, and also back on my point about the early states and how you have to have a campaign that inhales and exhales and breathes in these early states, that by definition is putting the candidate into increasingly less structured environments.
Yeah.
And what these folks, I would end here. These folks need to tighten up.
Well, and the truth is, he's not doing all that much.
Right.
But every time he does go out, he says something that we're like, what are you talking about? And Holly, the Trump team is all over this.
I know.
Every moment they are seizing in, and this is a preview. I mean, they're going to eat him alive.
Well, I mean, to some degree, though, I think us having lived through a Trump campaign and Trump presidency has sort of normalized this raw authenticity that we see coming from Biden. So to some degree, I think it's actually helped Biden that we've all kind of just readjusted our mindset, and it's just more normal now, right? So if Biden had done this 8 years ago, if he
it would
have been different. It just doesn't look so bad now. And I think people think they know him, and that's the exact same thing they thought about Trump. They felt like they knew him, and every other candidate, they feel like they know Bernie too. But he's mean.
But that's why Uncle Joe isn't mean. Uncle Joe isn't mean.
He's cranky.
The counterpoint to what you're saying, though, Holly, is that we are so desperate to beat this guy, and we so abhor everything that he represents, that drawing a parallel saying it's okay because Trump says crazy stuff all the time, I don't really think that flies in Democratic primaries.
I think his voters know that.
I mean, look, he's still number 1 in the polls. There's no doubt about it. To me, the question is, how many of these can he sustain before people go, this guy is going to get destroyed by Donald Trump on a debate stage?
But Roger, do people vote for a candidate in a primary because they think they will be the ultimate winner, or do they vote for them because they like them?
With Biden, it's because they think he's going to win.
The former is actually why a lot of people are supporting them.
Because of the electability thing.
Yeah.
That's why they're with him.
Sure.
But I don't understand that, which is if you do believe this person is the most electable, then you have to try and put him on the stage with Donald Trump. And the man he doesn't remember his own campaign side. I mean, these things sound trivial. We all watched 2016. They get dismantled by Donald Trump. This is what
if you're
he
not
is
quick
the
on
best.
Your feet, forget about it.
Look, say whatever else you want about the man. He is a master of dismantling people based upon silly things like this. Don't you think that's what we're going to see if we saw a matchup between the two?
At first, the real question, I think, is to me, the Biden stumbles don't reflect malice or some sinister intent.
Agree.
Similar to his physical kind of proximity issues with women, I think is awkward and anachronistic, but I don't think it reflects some predatory instincts or something. the real question, I think, is how long does the president's kind of unhinged carnival barker routine still resonate? Like, even you're starting to even see some cracks in the agricultural sector, right? So I think, you can focus, the Biden missteps to me are paper cuts compared to the gaping wounds of what this president is doing, and in many ways not doing by virtue of not doing anything.
That's a very low bar. In our view.
It is, and then so I think if you fast forward a year from now, Biden can rise to the moment, and there is vulnerability there for the president. If in no other situation than coal, for example, this nation's coal production went down 15 gigawatts in the last 2 years of the Obama administration. It went down 20 gigawatts in the first 2 years of the Trump administration. Coal's actually suffering under this president, oddly enough. There's many, many narratives like that in the economic sector, March of this year being the largest single month growth in our budget deficit of $234 billion, for example, that the current occupant is very, very vulnerable on. And so if Biden can, stabilize, and I'm not even saying I think he's going to be the nominee, but I do think if he can stabilize, he could actually do quite well, I think, actually, on a debate stage.
To me, to do what you're talking about, he'd have to admit that what they did under the Obama administration was a problem. That the neoliberal framework that they adopted throughout their entire administration is something that they would have to repudiate and say that Trump has failed at turning that around.
Right.
I don't know if he's capable of that.
I don't
and that's
either.
the problem with his candidacy.
Yeah, and I think, and remember, the president still has a year, and he can wait until the very last minute, and he can implement policies overnight. They can absolutely change the course of.
I don't know about that.
Well, you can. There are a lot of executive. Think about the agriculture and the coal business. All of these industries can be immediately impacted by executive orders and policy decisions.
Whether they're actually implemented or not, one thing that we've seen this president excel at, and we saw it before the midterm elections, which were not good for Republicans, but I would say the president's actions saved them several Senate seats in red states, where he turned the conversation. He didn't do anything. He just transformed the conversation into this ridiculous nonsense about a migrant caravan invasion, etc., and couple that with the messaging around Kavanaugh, and he was very much able to drive the national narrative without actually doing anything. I think, look, it's hard for me to imagine Biden being up to the task of being nimble enough, not only on a debate stage, but with his campaign and with what he's putting out there in the world to handle this president who is unlike any we have ever seen before.
Yeah. I feel bad. I watch the Mark Lauders and the people, who actually work on the campaign for the current occupant, and I feel bad for them because your example from the midterms is perfect. Instead of running on the economic news, he sucked up all the oxygen with the caravan thing, which I guess included smallpox and ISIS and any number of other things. They, in the course of that, talk about stumbles, the vice president said 10 terrorists a day are seized on the southern border, all the stuff that they had to walk back and et cetera. But I feel bad for the folks who are actually sitting there putting together a re-election strategy, because this individual is so erratic that he's just going to go off on something Ann Coulter tweets or whatever, irrespective of some 3-ring binder that his campaign has put together about here's how we close the deal kind of stuff.
Well, it's because the binders never worked, right, Holly?
No, he's his own strategist, and that
Mitt Romney had a lot of binders, as we all remember. It didn't work out so well.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Tomorrow on Rising, my one-on-one conversation with acting U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Ken Cuccinelli. He's going to provide some context for the latest changes to the requirements for obtaining a green card or a temporary visa. And former New York Times labor reporter Stephen Greenhouse explains the decades-long decline of worker power in modern-day America and how the marginalized are fighting back. He's got a new book out. Excited to talk to him about that. Have a fabulous day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.